Hey, I want to talk about a difficult subject, involuntary celibacy, and in particular the rise of incel groups on social media and particularly on TikTok. For those of you who know me from TikTok, you'll know that I've been engaged in a whole series of twos and fros and a large number of videos and comments relating to certain creators on TikTok who form the nucleus of involuntary celibate groupings, who primarily are in the business, it seems, of blaming women for their lack of success in finding suitable partners. And underlying this is their constant assertion that they are good guys or nice guys. And there's been a huge amount of pushback and to and fro. And I've weighed in on that. And obviously everything I have to say here is my opinion, but I decided to make this longer form video exclusively for YouTube because the one thing that this particular issue doesn't lend itself well to is the 60-second or even 3-minute format on TikTok, and then the way in which comments go back and forth, and the poor set out of comments on TikTok mean that it's almost impossible to have this sort of complex and nuanced discussion in a meaningful way that doesn't just mean that people get entrenched in their own positions. On top of that, I was asked a really interesting question in private DMs relating to one of my videos about potential solutions for involuntary celibate men outside of their incel groupings and echo chambers. And that question was, why are there apparently no women incels? Why are there no female incels? And in light of the fact that women are rejected just as frequently as men, so why don't they turn to this involuntary celibate sort of grouping, which seems to look outwards and project outwards for solutions of the problem, and rather look to their friends and support mechanisms and look inwards and ask the question, what's wrong with me? As opposed to the men going, what's wrong with the world, or what's wrong with feminism, or what's wrong with women? Now, I think this is primarily because we're dealing with two different types of issues. We're comparing apples with oranges when we talk about rejection of women and rejection of men. So in the first instance, men are rejected from looking for a physical intimacy partner, a sexual partner. That's what involuntary celibacy tends to relate to. So men are looking for sexual partners, somebody to have sex with, and are being rejected in their advances, and therefore find themselves in this position of not wanting to be celibate, but not being able to find somebody to not be celibate with. Whereas what women tend to be looking for are more holistic relationships, romance, love, partnership with a man, where sex and intimacy is one part of that, or physical intimacy is one part of that, but it's part of a spectrum. So the two parties, and I'm talking in generalities, are looking for different things. So when a man is rejected in his sexual advances, he has a very different reaction to a woman who is rejected when she wants more from a relationship than just sex. Because of course we all accept that by and large, if a woman wants physical intimacy, if she wants sex, she can go out and find it in 15 minutes. Because there are so many men out there that would be willing to just sleep with a woman for the sake of sleeping with her. But of course, finding a more holistic, nourishing, fulfilling relationship is a far harder thing. But many men don't care about that aspect. They simply care that they're getting laid. And so women find themselves in a position where what they want cannot be forcibly taken from a man. The man has to want to give it. He has to be open to that broader relationship experience. He has to want intimacy beyond sex. He has to want partnership. He has to want growth and nourishment from his relationship, right? It can't be taken. It has to be given. Whereas sexual intimacy, physical intimacy can, of course, in extreme cases be taken, and it very often is by men. And I don't even mean to the necessity of rape. as such. But in terms of coercion and manipulation and gaslighting and tactics and strategies and pickup lines and all of these things that pickup artists and others teach men, strategies for getting women into bed, pretenses, how to come across, what to say, and all of these things, which are strategies designed to gaslight and manipulate women into bed with them, right? So this is something that can be taken from a woman by physical violence, by coercion, by manipulation, by gaslighting, by abuse, by strategic pretending to be somebody that you're not. And that is a very, very different dynamic. And it's the dynamic that leads to so much fear and, ironically, to the rejection of men. Because women know and they sense the energy of a man who is using those tactics, who is just trying to get them into bed and is not interested in what the woman wants in terms of validation, the prospect of a meaningful, holistic, romantic relationship. And so we are really at the heart talking about apples and oranges. So when women are rejected, they go to their friends, their female relatives, perhaps some male relatives, for comfort, for validation, for the message, very simply, that it's not something that's wrong with them, but something that's wrong with men's ability to engage in these meaningful, holistic relationships. The fact that, by and large, men either don't know that this type of relationship is available or know that it is but have no real interest in it for whatever reasons, don't believe that it serves them to be in these partnerships, right? And so the women will look inwards. Of course, it's in their nature to be introspective and say, what's wrong with me? But the validation they will receive from their friends is largely, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that what you're expecting or desiring from men is not achievable, but only achievable within a very narrow range of men, because the broad range of men are not capable of this. So the men that rise above the bare minimum standard for the kind of relationships that women are looking at or for are rare. On the other hand, of course, when women reject a man's sexual advances where his interest is narrow, then what happens is that, and this is what we're seeing in social media now with these incel groups, is that he becomes increasingly frustrated because what he believes is that he is entitled to a woman's body, because that's what society has told him throughout his life. Broadly speaking, the patriarchal system that we live under, modern day capitalism, the competitive system, says that in effect, you are entitled to a woman's body, that she doesn't have the right to full bodily autonomy. And her failing to respond positively to your overtures is her withholding something from you that you are entitled to. And of course, that is such wrong thinking. But what happens is when he goes back into these male groups of particularly involuntary celibate males, his message that there's nothing wrong with his belief, that there's nothing wrong with him and that there's something wrong with the women who are not giving him what he is entitled to, is reinforced by these guys, because what they say to each other is, well, you're a nice guy, you're a good guy, what the hell's wrong with you? Why are these women not giving you what you deserve, what you've earned, what you've paid for? You've paid for their meals, you've said the right things to them, you've done what they asked superficially. You've made yourself look good. You've taken them on dates. You've shown them that, in your mind, you're a nice guy or a good guy, and they're still batting you back. And the trouble is, of course, that these men don't understand that their idea of what constitutes a nice or good man is not necessarily what a woman sees or wants. And in particular, if the energy that you're putting out as a man in approaching women is, I want to fuck you, then ultimately, of course, the woman picks up on that. And unless she is, strongly attracted to you for some other reason, that message is going to immediately bring up walls and defensiveness and fear on the woman's part, which is the largest explanation as to why these guys are failing in their approach to women. It boils down to, and I hate to say it, that they're just fucking creepy, right? They come across as creepy because their intentions are so obvious to women, and women don't want that. They want more than that. So the guy may be a nice guy or a good guy, and he certainly will be in his own view, but the women want more than what he is offering or asking for. And so he gets rejected and ends up in a totally different place to the woman who is rejected. And this is the difference. Women want those relationships. Men feel entitled to the relationships that they're looking for. And so when these guys go back into their incel circles and men's rights activist circles and alpha male circles and pickup artist circles, they are emboldened by their peers in their belief, in their wrong belief. And so they just keep trying the same thing, which we all know is the definition of insanity, right? Trying the same thing over and over and over again and getting the same results, but expecting a different result is the very heart of madness. And this is why they are mad. And I mean mad in the sense of angry, and mad in the sense of not understanding the problem or the potential solution to the problem. And so what's actually happening is that these young men, and they're usually young men, are being radicalized by the circles that they then move into for validation, for sympathy, for support, into raging misogynists. So they increasingly dislike women because of nothing's working with women. And then they go into these groups where they hear all the same stories and all the same guys saying, there's nothing wrong with you, you're a nice guy. There's something wrong with these bloody women. They're setting the bar too high. They have unreasonable expectations. They're making bad choices. They're going for the wrong men. Everything that says that the problem is outside. And so their fear of women grows into hatred of women and grows into all forms of misogyny that then just come out, so that actually they increase their problem. Because their underlying fear and hatred of women, again, is picked up by the women that they continue to try and pick up. It's picked up energetically, it's picked up in tone, it's picked up in intention. Women are intuitive, guys. They know when all you want to do is fuck them. They know it. And unless all they want to do is fuck you, then you are going to be rejected. And so we have to come back to solutions. And I guess what I've been saying throughout my TikToks, throughout this message is, these guys are looking in the wrong place for the answer to their problem. And where they're looking is just making the problem worse and turning them more and more and more into the people that are bound to be rejected by women, instead of learning how to become acceptable. So yeah, there aren't women incels, because what they do is look for men to return what they want from the relationship. And yes, that's a narrow circle, and yes, it can be a very painful search, but at the end of the day, they mostly understand that the problem does not lie with them, but with men's inability to enter into full, meaningful, nourishing partnerships. So they hope for that to happen. They throw the message out there constantly about what they want from men, in the hope that men will pick up on this from their desire as men to be in good relationships with women. And so what you see on social media are a lot of women. Most of them would regard themselves as feminists, but most would also regard themselves as wanting to be in relationship with men, but for those relationships to be fully formed partnerships, which of course include good physical intimacy, because women, like men, love good sex. There's nothing wrong with that. They're just picky about who they have it with, because they want more than just good sex. So guys who find themselves in this position of being rejected, firstly, perhaps consider increasing the scope of what you want from a relationship to more than sex, to partnership, good conversation, to nourishment, to growth, to intimacy that isn't just based on physical intimacy, but emotional intimacy, psychological intimacy, spiritual intimacy. These things are all available in relationship. It isn't just about sex. So if you're looking for how to do that, please, I beg you, don't go look into these alpha males. Don't go into the the tater-tot universe, because all you'll ever learn there from these whining men's rights activists and pickup artists is tactics and strategies for how to pick up women, and all of them are reliant on you as a man pretending to be somebody that you're not. It's essential for good relationships for you to be yourself, because it is unsustainable for you to be somebody else. You have to at least have enough self-belief and self-love to know that you as an individual are enough, because you are. And there is nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is your belief about what's available in relationship and how to get it. And so you have to change. You have to make yourself acceptable. And that is not about changing tactics and strategies for picking up women, because that is not, that's pretending to be someone else. That's not fundamental change of who you are and how you project yourself into the world. And so my suggestion there is that if you want to be in good, fulfilling relationships, ones that of course include good physical intimacy and sex, but are more than that, then don't go to the incel groups and alphas. Go primarily to women and believe them when they say what they want, and look to changing yourself to providing women with what they want, because everybody wins in that scenario. But, and this is a big but, if you fear women to the extent that you can't actually listen or to them or learn from them or accept what they have to say, there are a ton of fantastic free resources on the internet and social media from men who you might be prepared to listen to, who are in healthy, good, meaningful relationships, or who have learned from their past inability to be in good relationships. And without blowing my own trumpet, because I'm certainly not the only one out there, I was in a 28-year marriage. I fucked it up. I've been divorced for 4 and a bit years now, but I have learned from my mistakes. I understand to the extent possible what women want from a relationship and how to be the person that they want you to be it sincerely. That is now me. I have changed. I am not pretending to be that guy. I am that guy. And the success in terms of the relationships that I now found myself in is beyond measure. I am privileged to be in the romantic relationships that I have with women. Wonderful, nourishing, beautiful, fulfilling relationships at all levels, including what you currently now want in terms of physical intimacy, but so much more. And there are a ton of us on social media, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, that will help you. And I'm going to, in the comments here, suggest some people that you might follow. But my first suggestion, always up front with this, is, well, there are two. The first is, please, please, please listen to Esther Perel, P-E-R-E-L. She's all over social media, and she is an expert. She has been a couples therapist, relationship therapist, sex therapist for decades. She's seen tens of thousands and has wide practical experience, as well as incredible insight and intelligence into what makes a good relationship. And she has tons of resources online that are free and wonderful, compassionate insight. And the other that I always recommend is the Gottman Institute, Gottman Institute, where again, decades of practical research into couples, into what works in heterosexual relationships. So those are two easy and what I would regard as neutral resources. But there are wonderful women and male creators on TikTok, which is what I know best, but I'm sure you can find them across Instagram, across other social media, that I will put in the comments to this video, or sorry, in the whatever you call it, the bits below the video, you know what I'm talking about, that I can suggest that you look at. And look, some of these you're going to find antagonistic, particularly perhaps if you find me antagonistic. I would beg you to look past the tone, look past the antagonism, because these are deeply caring people. And yes, their message is sometimes going to cause friction, but that resistance that you have to the message comes from your shadow. It comes from your conditioning. It comes from your ego. You have to see past that to the core of the message, which is, from the women, this is what we want from men. From the men, this is what you need to do to become attractive to women, to become a better man, to step above the bare minimum bar that currently exists, and to move on from there into better and better relationship. So please, guys who find themselves in this position, learn from the right people, look to the right places, because at the end of the day, it's 100% up to you to change, because the world, right or wrong, is not going to change. Women are not going to change. Feminists are not going to change their message to accommodate you guys, because they want equality with men. What they don't want is to have to play small, to give things up, to change themselves in order to accommodate your desires, because they regard, quite rightly, your desires as base. Yes, they want physical intimacy, but they want a hell of a lot more than that, and currently that's not what you guys are delivering. So it's you that has to change, and I hope that you take that in the spirit in which it's meant. I'm trying to come from all the compassion and love that I feel in my heart to make sure that you understand that these relationships, these good, beautiful, nourishing relationships, are 100% possible, but they're only possible if you step up into being the man that is capable of those relationships. And when you become capable, when you show yourself willing to grow, to embrace emotional intimacy, emotional intelligence, that is when these relationships will come to you. And finally, my final piece of advice, please, please, please consider going to therapy. Everybody should go. Men, women, children should go to therapy. Because if you think you've got your shit together, as I used to for 30 odd years, think I had my shit together and everybody else was wrong, you have no idea what a beautiful breakthrough in terms of your own ability to love and be in this world and be in loving relationships therapy will make, because you will unpack all of the shit that led you to this terrible position of being unable to attract the relationship that you want. I really sincerely hope that helps, and let's meet up in the comments, because if there's more that you want to know, or pointers that you want, or even just to argue with me, although I'd rather you didn't, then let's engage and let's start this conversation in a genuinely safe place, rather than a place that's just an echo chamber for the misogynistic bullshit that's currently out there. Peace and love.